In the frigid grip of winter 1938, as the relentless advance of Francisco Franco's nationalist armies carved through the jagged peaks and mist-shrouded valleys of Asturias in northern Spain, a young and ambitious American war correspondent named Thomas McKinnon found himself venturing into territories far removed from the front lines of battle. McKinnon, a sharp-eyed journalist from New York with a penchant for uncovering the human stories behind the headlines, had embedded himself with a detachment of Guardia civil troops on a routine patrol through the remote mountainous regions. Little did he know that this detour from the chaos of the Spanish Civil War would lead him to a discovery so profoundly disturbing that it would etch itself into his psyche, haunting his dreams and shaping his world for the remainder of his days. Tucked away in a forgotten cleft of land near the tiny village of Potes, amid ancient oak forests and sheer cliffs that seemed to guard secrets from the world, McKinnon stumbled upon the crumbling remnants of a family estate. Local survivors, gaunt and weary from years of conflict, spoke in hushed tones of this place, referring to it as the domain of the most accursed bloodline in all of Spain, a lineage plagued by whispers of madness, isolation, and unspeakable practices. This bloodline belonged to three sisters, Elena, Magdalena, and Esperanza Calderón. Born into a world of seclusion, these women had not merely shared a home in their ancestral stone farmhouse, but had also bound themselves to a single husband in a deliberate and calculated effort to forge what later medical and genetic experts would describe as the most profoundly isolated family tree ever documented in European history. Their story, shrouded in taboo and tragedy, had unfolded over generations, hidden from prying eyes until the war's upheavals inadvertently peeled back the veil. For over 80 years following McKinnon's encounter, his detailed reports, sealed away in dusty archives of the U.S. State Department in Washington, D.C., remained classified, buried alongside witness testimonies deemed too grotesque and morally corrosive for public release. These documents painted a picture of events spanning from 1895 to 1938 in that desolate corner of Asturias, challenging fundamental notions of family, survival, and the terrifying extremes to which humans might go in the name of preserving what they perceive as a sacred, untainted heritage. The Calderón saga was not just a tale of personal delusion, but a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked isolation, where societal norms dissolve and primal instincts warp into something monstrous. If narratives steeped in the shadows of history, where forgotten mysteries intertwine with the threads of American involvement, intrigue you, consider subscribing to our channel and enabling notifications. We delve into the most chilling, overlooked accounts from across the globe that echo back to U.S. soil in unexpected ways. Share in the comments, from which state or corner of the world are you engaging with this story? We cherish input from our community of history buffs and mystery seekers, especially those with Spanish or European heritage who might spot echoes of ancient customs or familial lore in these tales. The towering mountains of eastern Asturias had long served as a natural fortress, a labyrinth of craggy summits and deep gorges where the relentless winds carried echoes of forgotten eras, and the outside world seemed a distant myth. Even as the Spanish Civil War raged from 1936 to 1939, tearing the nation asunder with ideological fury and bloodshed, these isolated pockets near the majestic Picos de Europa escaped much of the direct carnage that devastated urban centers and coastal plains. It was within one such hidden hamlet, Potes, a cluster of weathered stone huts, clinging to the slopes like barnacles on a shipwreck, that the Calderón family had rooted themselves for nearly 3 centuries. Their ancestors had migrated from the Basque regions in the 1040s, hardy folk who herded cattle through treacherous passes and chiseled homes from the unyielding rock, blending their lives with the harsh rhythms of the land. By 1895, the once thriving clan had withered to a fragile remnant, Don Aurelio Calderón, a stern patriarch in his mid-40s, and his three daughters, Elena, the eldest at 22, with her commanding presence, Magdalena, 20, whose gentle demeanor hid a quiet curiosity, and Esperanza, just 18, marked by a subtle limp that added to her air of quiet resilience. Their mother, Conception, had succumbed to the perils of childbirth years earlier, attempting to bring a fourth daughter into the world, leaving Aurelio to shoulder the burden of raising his girls in near-total solitude. The scattered neighboring families, few and far between, were kept at arm's length, their interactions limited to rare barters for essentials. The nearest town of note, Cangas de Onís, lay a grueling full day's journey away, navigable only by mule along narrow, winding paths that twisted like serpents through the mountains, paths that became deadly traps under the weight of winter snows, isolating the Calderons for months on end. Aurelio was a man consumed by an unyielding obsession with limpieza de sangre, the purity of blood, a concept rooted in Spain's historical fears of contamination from Moorish, Jewish, or other inferior influences. He spent endless evenings poring over faded parchments and leather-bound ledgers stored in an ancient wooden chest inherited from his father, meticulously tracing the Calderón lineage through centuries of marriage certificates, baptismal records, and cryptic family annotations. What he uncovered filled him with the intoxicating mix of pride and paralyzing fear. The Calderons had maintained an astonishing degree of genetic isolation. No intermarriages with Moors during the Reconquista, no unions with conversos who had converted under duress, and crucially, no dilution through bonds with the local Asturian peasants, whom Aurelio dismissed as racially debased, their blood muddied by generations of haphazard mixing. This revelation presented Aurelio with a cruel paradox. As the last male heir, he stood at the precipice of extinction. Allowing his daughters to marry outsiders would irreparably sully the sacred bloodline he revered as a divine gift. Forbidding marriage altogether would doom the lineage to oblivion with his passing. In the long, oppressive winters, when blizzards howled like vengeful spirits outside the thick stone walls, and the family huddled around a flickering hearth for warmth, a third, darker path began to form in his mind, a solution born of desperation, twisted logic, and a fanatic's zeal. From their earliest memories, the three sisters had been indoctrinated with tales that set them apart from the rest of humanity. Aurelio wove elaborate myths of their noble descent from Visigothic kings, ancient warriors who had ruled Iberia before the Moorish invasions, claiming their blood carried innate superiorities, enhanced intellect, resilience, and even spiritual attunement that demanded vigilant protection. Elena, with her chiseled features, piercing gray eyes that seemed to pierce souls, and raven hair that fell in stern waves, had become her father's most devoted disciple, assisting him in charting family trees and debating the merits of historical alliances. Magdalena, softer in both form and spirit, with rounded cheeks and a voice like a gentle stream, often gazed longingly at the distant horizons visible from their valley, her mind wandering to stories of bustling markets and far-off cities, though she had been taught that such yearnings were temptations of the weak, signs of impure thoughts that could erode the family's essence. Esperanza, the youngest, bore her limp as a badge of distinction, as Aurelio interpreted it, a physical manifestation of their elite heritage, akin to the deformities noted in royal bloodlines of old, proof of undiluted nobility rather than flaw. Their isolation had forged them into beings almost alien to the outside world. By 1895, their speech had evolved into a peculiar dialect, a melange of archaic Castilian peppered with Asturian idioms and fragments of Latin gleaned from old religious texts, rendering conversations with outsiders stilted and confusing. Their clothing, hand-stitched from wool and linen using patterns unchanged since their grandparents' time, evoked ghosts of a bygone era. Long skirts, embroidered blouses, and sturdy boots that spoke of practicality over fashion. But the most profound distortion lay in their interpersonal dynamics. Boundaries that society deemed inviolable had blurred under Aurelio's influence, fostering an intimacy that teetered on the edge of the forbidden, all in service to the greater cause of blood preservation. As the first frosts of 1895 blanketed the valley in a crystalline hush, Aurelio summoned his daughters to the central room of their farmhouse, where the air hung heavy with the scent of burning pine and dried herbs. The room, lit by the unsteady glow of oil lamps, was lined with shelves of yellowed books and the ever-present genealogical charts pinned to the walls like sacred tapestries. With a voice grave and resolute, he unveiled his plan, framing it as a holy imperative bestowed upon them by fate and divinity. He had identified the perfect vessel for their lineage's continuation, a man named Rodrigo Calderón, purportedly a distant cousin residing in a village near Santander. Rodrigo's blood, Aurelio assured them, traced back unblemished to their shared ancestors, verified through exhaustive research. What he concealed was the damning truth. Rodrigo was no cousin but Aurelio's own son, born of an illicit union with his late sister Carmen, making him the sister's half-brother. This deception was masterful, supported by forged documents meticulously crafted over months in secret. In Aurelio's deranged worldview, this arrangement would not corrupt but elevate their heritage, concentrating it to unprecedented purity, producing offspring of godlike potential. The structure he outlined was chilling in its precision. Each sister would rotate as Rodrigo's primary wife for 1 month, with the others acting as supportive companions in household duties and emotional sustenance. Children would be raised collectively, their exact paternity obscured to foster unity and prevent jealousy, all living in harmonious devotion to the mission of creating flawless heirs. Elena's acceptance was immediate and fervent, her gray eyes alight with the zeal of a true believer, seeing in the plan a fulfillment of her role as the family's guardian. Magdalena hesitated, her brow furrowing as questions bubbled up, concerns about morality, love, and the natural order. But Aurelio's barrage of scriptural interpretations and appeals to ancestral honor silenced her, leaving her with a knot of unease in her stomach. Esperanza alone sensed the abyss yawning before them, her protests rising like a storm, decrying the violation of nature and soul. But her father dismissed her as immature, her limp a reminder of her vulnerability, and the weight of family loyalty crushed her resistance. Within a month, Rodrigo arrived, trudging through the gathering snows on a weary mule, his arrival heralded by the crunch of frost underfoot. He was a man of 35, hollow-cheeked and broad-shouldered, his face etched with lines from a life of labor in Santander's fields and workshops. His dark eyes held a knowing glint, as if he carried burdens unspoken, and his demeanor suggested a resignation to fate that aligned perfectly with Aurelio's designs. The winter of 1896 descended like a shroud, early blizzards sealing the valley in an icy embrace, cutting off all escape and forcing the family into intimate confinement. It was in this claustrophobic cocoon that the plan's true horrors began to unfurl, transforming abstract ideology into tangible nightmare.